Okay, sorry I got cut off. I try not to make these that long, but I wanted to give you lots and lots of examples. So we're going to move on from that one. All right, so what about cubed roots? So we've done a lot of square roots. What about when the number is something other than 2, or the root is something other than 2? So what you need to remember is we don't need to multiply for this one example by the third root of 25. That's not going to solve our problem. It's not going to rationalize that answer. And why it doesn't, because if you remember, so product of roots is, or radicals, is that, so I can simplify this 25, that's the same as 5 squared. But this is the third root of 5 squared, so this is actually 5 to the 2/3, which doesn't solve my problem at all. So what I actually need is to multiply this by another third root of 5. So another 5 to the 1/3, because now I've got this times 5 to the 1/3, product of, or properties of exponents. This just becomes 5 to the 3/3, which is 5. So 5 to the 1. All right, so that's what we need to do to this one, is actually multiply it times the third root of 5 over the third root of 5. All right, so what happens when we do this is, remember, we're going to multiply third root of 5 times both terms on the top. Okay, so we've got -5 times the third root of 5. And now we have plus the third root of 5 times 5, which is 25. And on the bottom, what we have is a 5. And this is as simplified as it gets. All right, so same type of thing for the next one. This 10 just simplifies to 2 and 5. So there's nothing there that I can make this any easier to multiply by. So I'm actually going to have to take it to the third root of 10 squared, or 100. And multiply top and bottom by that. So I have 5 to the third root of 100 plus the third root of 200. So 2 times 100 all over 10. All right, and this doesn't simplify out. You can break this 200 down. This is 200 breaks down to, it breaks down to 8. Yeah, it's 8 times 25, and we know 8 breaks down to 2 times 2 times 2, so I can pull a 2 out of there. So my simplified answer would still be 5 to the third root of 100 plus 2 times the third root of, we're left with a 25 on the inside, all over 10. So we can simplify it a little bit, but not a whole lot. All right, and the next problems. All right, so we're going to simplify some of these first. Okay, so these are square roots. So if I'm looking at this, I've got on the top, I've got 6 plus 4, this n to the 4th to the square root, so that's n squared. And I'm still left with the square root of 7 on the inside. But on the bottom, I've got an 8 plus 2, square root of n to the 4th is n squared. So I actually don't have an irrational number on the bottom. I don't have that radical, so all I need to do is just simplify this. 2 comes out of all of these. So 3 plus 2n squared times the square root of 7 over 4 plus n squared. And that is as simplified as that one gets. All right, so same thing for 12. You've got the square root of a to the 4th, so I can pull an a squared out of there. We're going to skip through that one. And we're going to do a messy one. All right, we're going to do 13. 14 is super messy. If you want to challenge yourself, you can try that one. We're just going to do 13 to finish up here. All right, so I'm going to simplify this again. So I've got these square roots. So on the top, I've got an n cubed, so I can pull an n squared. This is n times n times n, so I can get rid of 2 of those n's. I'm left with 5n on the inside. So n to the 4th, square root of that is n squared. And I've got n squared times the square root of 6. All right, now so I still have this irrational number on the bottom. So this is where I am going to have to multiply by the conjugate. So I'm going to multiply times n squared minus n squared square root of 6 over n squared minus n squared square root of 6. All right, so on the top I've got one term times two terms. So I have a 9n cubed square root of 5n minus 9n cubed square root. So 6 times 5n gives me a 30n. All right, but on the bottom, this is going to be another box problem. So I've got n squared and n squared square root of 6. And I've got n squared and minus n squared square root of 6. All right, so I've got n to the 4th. I've got n to the 4th square root of 6. This better fall out to be minus n to the 4th square root of 6, so those cancel. And I'm left with minus n to the 4th. The square root of 6 times square root of 6 means I've got a 6 n to the 4th. All right, so those actually combine on the bottom to become minus 5n to the 4th. All right, I can simplify this. You notice I've got n squared and n cubed. So if I pull an n squared out of there, I'm going to cancel. So I pull an n squared. I've got 9n square root of 5n minus 9 square root of 30n. If I pull an n squared out of the bottom, I've got minus 5n squared. So those cancel out. I'm going to move my negative, filter my negative through. So my final answer is actually a minus 9n square root of 5n plus 9 square root of 30n all over 5n squared. You could flip those around so the minus isn't hanging out front if you want, or you can leave it like that. All right, so that's about as messy as they will get. That is rationalizing. Here's your assignments you can check on Schoology. If you have any questions, make sure you email me. We can do some Zoom if you want, if you're working problems and you're stuck. We'll work through it. Just make sure you ask lots of questions.